There is no fraud. Anna Nicole said that he was the...
She didn't like, I mean, there's divorce, right, Michael Bryant?
Well, yeah, and in fact, she initiated that process about 25 days after her husband disappeared. In fact, the day after he disappeared, she went in and got a TRO because she was so upset about this altercation they had had. So she did use the divorce, but it was a little bit after the fact.
Okay, I want to go to Kyle Waters here in studio. Kyle, it seems to me that despite the fact this is a so-called circumstantial evidence case, it does seem that there's a lot of really bad circumstantial evidence from a defense perspective.
Circumstantial evidence doesn't mean it's a weak case. Just saying that it's a circumstantial case. There's a lot here, and she's certainly got a tough road to hoe here if she's going to try to convince anyone that she wasn't involved in the murder.
And we're defense lawyers. John Saykanic, now we've had two defense lawyers weigh in and say this looks like a tough one. Help us out here, John. What's the defense?
I'll help you out.
Okay.
When I first heard about the body being in 3 suitcases, I thought about the great Lena Wertmuller movie, Seven Beauties, a 1975 foreign film. And in that movie, it takes place in the 1930s in Naples, and the man wants to become a mafia guy, and he goes to the mafia boss who says, I need men of honor. And his sister turns out was a prostitute. So he kills the pimp. Then he calls up the mafia guy, goes, what do I do with the body? And he says, use your imagination. Turns out, and this is actually a funny scene in the movie, he chops the body up and puts it in 3 suitcases. Then, and this is another funny scene, it's a tragic comedy, he tries to get rid of the suitcases, and it's 200 pounds, 250 pounds of suitcases, and he's falling all over the street with the suitcases. So here you have a petite woman who allegedly saw the body up, and there's no blood, even though they did scientific testing, then took these 3 huge suitcases, brought them to Chesapeake Bay, and threw them there. Obviously, it's a stretch to see how could she have done this. Now, when you're trying to get to the truth when you do a trial, that's what you're there for. You're trying to recreate history.
John,
you're trying to recreate history.
We are not trying to get the truth. The truth hopefully will emerge as a byproduct of our advocacy, but we on the defense side, we're trying to acquit our client. Those on the prosecution side trying to convict, and the truth emerges in the interstices of that process. But I don't go into a courtroom looking for the truth. You don't tell me that you go into a courtroom looking for the truth.
I misspoke, sue me.
Okay.
I made a mistake.
Right.
What you're trying to do at a trial is recreate history. You're trying to show what happened. It's a story, like a film. Now, if the jury's left to believe that this woman did everything herself, they got a huge problem. It could be a problematic case. Now, they're saying maybe she had help. Okay, you had a year to do an investigation before you charged her. Who was helping her?
But Michael Bryant, she's charged with murder. Even if the jury came to the conclusion that it was impossible for her to have cut up the body in the apartment with the saw, packed it into suitcases, and schlepped them herself, that doesn't mean she didn't make the guy dead. It just means she had help from somebody cleaning up the mess.
And the prosecution has said from opening statements on that there was an accomplice. We don't know who it was. We give up, so to speak, on that. But luckily in New Jersey we have accomplice liability statutes. Therefore, all for one and one for all. Even if we can't get the others, she's going down.
Well, lucky for you on the prosecution side, bad luck for us on the defense side. We'll come back with more on the Melanie McGuire murder trial when we return. Stay with us.
You became aware that William was killed, and you spoke to Melanie McGuire. Did you respond to her, sir, as a sympathetic employer of a decent man? Is that how you responded to her? I'll withdraw it, Judge.
Oh, how cheap. Kyle Waters, how incredibly cheap is that as a shot? I mean...
That was extremely lame. Just the whole question. And then she even knew right away. It was just, I'll withdraw it.
Withdrawn, right. And you
argue your summation at the end.
Right. But, John Saykanic, I'm watching this, and while she didn't need to do that, and in my view, it's sort of, it's just such a clear example of prosecutorial misconduct, but they can get away with it, so they do it. It does seem, though, that she has some credibility issues in her case. Even if there's a lot of evidence strongly suggesting that Melanie McGuire committed the murder, there's not much evidence suggesting that she actually dismembered the body in the apartment and removed it in luggage. And while proof of one doesn't negate innocence of the other, the reality is that if the jury has questions about the portion of the prosecution's case. They may have questions about all of it, right?
Getting back to my movie analogy,
yes.
if you will, let's say they make a movie about this case, and they have the other individual with a mask on, and that person shoots, helps with the shooting, helps with the dismemberment, helps with the packing, helps with the disposing, and you never find out who is this person in the mask. You would come out feeling cheated from the movie theater. You would feel, what's going on? Why wasn't this told? And that could be a problem. Now, there is a strong circumstantial case, but the defense is going to be that she was framed. And if you are going to frame somebody, the framers are going to make it look like that person did it. That's the whole point of framing somebody. So it might look bad, but that would be what the framers want. And convictions in this country aren't based upon suspicion, conjecture, prejudice, bias, or unrelated inferences based upon unrelated inferences. So I don't think this is the slam dunk. I got to tell you, if I went to a movie and they never said who this other person was, but there was somebody else, I would be very dissatisfied. I would say, who wrote the screenplay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kyle, I'm actually finding myself being persuaded, oddly, by John's analysis. That's right. If they don't explain that, and they do argue this is a frame-up, then obviously whoever was the architect of the frame-up put the keystrokes on the computer, did the various computer searches, knowing that they would be found. But you have to sort of come up with that person, right? I mean, the whole trick here is if you can plausibly come up with somebody else who had a reason to do these things, you might walk your guy, or in this case, your gal.
Well, I don't know why the prosecution concedes she wasn't the one who did it, or she couldn't have done it alone. I don't see a reason. I think it fits into the prosecution theory to say this poor petite woman couldn't drag a whole body out of the house, but if she chopped it up into little pieces and put it in separate suitcases, then the 180-pound man becomes a 60-pound man. 3 times, and they could take him out and throw him anywhere.
Hey, John Saykanic, Kyle used to be a prosecutor, as you know, and I still think he has a bit of that taint left. The gun is a real problem, though. Never owned a gun in her life, had nothing to do with guns. 3 days before he disappears, she buys a .38 special. He's killed with a .38 special. He's killed with wad cutter bullets. She bought wad cutter bullets, and the gun has disappeared. That's really a problem.
The gun not being around is a big problem. And again, if she's being framed, that is the defense, that somebody took the gun, either him or somebody else.
Okay, but why did she buy the gun that got took in the first place?
Well, she did, again, to use the defense argument, she did use her own name, and she didn't try to conceal the fact that she bought the gun, and there was allegedly a reason, safety. There was a safety concern. That is the defense. And, the defense is going to be stuck with certain facts that they can't dispute, and the fact is she did buy the gun, and the fact is the gun is not around anymore.
Kyle Waters, what do you think about the notion that the jury is going to be in this courtroom for a very long time? They get to like Melanie McGuire, at least get to know her. I mean, she's not an ogre. She's not crazy in terms of her demeanor. And they're not going to get to like the victim very much because he's getting dirtied up extensively about being a bad husband, a gambler, and stuff like that. Any sympathy factor at work here?
Well, I think the only way for her to get a sympathy factor, because I'm not sure how effective it is sullying up the victim, but she'd have to take the stand and be like, I don't think having her just sit there and looking like, she's sad and upset about this and nervous, I think it's going to take a little bit more than that. I think she'd have to take the stand and convince them that she is a nice person and this guy wasn't.
And there's no way on earth that Joe Tacopina is going to advise her to do that, is there?
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. All right, and that just about wraps up all of my time with you. Let's take a look at what's coming up next on Catherine Cryer Live. Hey there, Catherine.
It is fun to watch our buddy Joe at work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, we got a lot to talk about. Anna Nicole, there's a lot of breaking news, developments, also her diaries. Old diaries are being auctioned. Pretty interesting stuff there. We're going to talk about paternity. We're talking about drug investigation. Chris Hansen from Dateline is here with his To Catch a Predator series and his new book. Pretty revealing stuff. A woman who watches Forensic Files did her own investigation, found DNA that cleared her husband, got him out of prison. But what is happening with the guy she now fingered? We'll tell you about that. And we've got John Waters is here with his new court TV show, Till Death Do Us Part.
Look, Catherine, I heard a rumor that you may end up with Howard K. Stern's lawyer on your show. And if you do, what I'm going to do is is going to leave these in the studio. These are our swabs, see? And if you would just ask her to take one and go like that with little baby Danny Lynn so we can resolve this issue. And if she won't, please find out
Crystal will be in studio here, so I'll certainly offer her your Q-tips.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. It sounds like a great show. Can't wait to watch. Okay. I want to thank my guests here in New York, John Saykanic and Kyle Waters. But most of all, I want to thank all of you for watching. And don't forget, you catch Nancy Grace tonight on CNN Headline News at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Ron Kuby. Thank you for watching. Catherine Cryer, you got to stay tuned. Up next.